Tonight, more than 15,000 National Guard troops are patrolling the nation's capital.
I don't think anybody has ever seen anything like this. Washington, D.C. is a city under siege today. Soldiers are camped inside the Capitol building for the first time since the Civil War.
Will the next president be inaugurated at noon on Wednesday? That's an unthinkable question. The Constitution demands it. But on the other hand, the law also required Congress to count the electoral votes January 6th, which the attack on the Capitol delayed. This week, Washington is an armed camp.
The country is on edge tonight. State capitals are in lockdown amid threats of more violence. Windows are boarded up, fences raised, and police and National Guard are on patrol. And Washington, D.C. resembles a military occupation. In the coming days, there will be 4 times as many troops there than in Afghanistan and Iraq combined.
This is an Omega Watchman Media Group production.
Due to the mature nature of this content, language, and depth, viewer discretion
And
is
upon the
advised.
earth, distress of nations, with perplexity. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. This know also, that in the last days, perilous times shall come.
Concerns and fears of new violence are growing after last week's attack on Congress and yesterday's second impeachment of Donald Trump. About 20,000 of these National Guard troops will be in the Capitol ahead of next Wednesday's inauguration of Joe Biden. That is reportedly more military right now than the U.S. has in Afghanistan and Iraq.
And it is a far different scene tonight in Washington, D.C., where a green zone perimeter has been established, roads shut down, and because of that video you just saw, the National Guard scouring for explosives and extremists, the incoming administration moving forward with the outdoor inauguration, and ABC's Kenneth Moten is there tonight.
Tonight, extraordinary security in the nation's capital. Officials taking no chances. Military reinforcements arriving by the plane load. National Guard troops coming from every corner of the U.S.
This mission is about protecting our republic itself. You're going to play a critical part in that at a time when our nation is in great need.
The 25,000 troops in the city by the inauguration have their orders. Watch for potential threats. Look for explosives. Protect the Capitol. Authorities say domestic extremists pose the most likely threat.
How serious is our country going to take domestic white extremism? And I think what we saw here last week is that we didn't take it seriously enough.
Tonight, the large security perimeter or green zone already tested. At least 3 people arrested in separate incidents, including 2 men carrying guns and ammunition. Tonight, the Guard setting up cots inside the Capitol. But the man tapped to review the security failures there, saying those troops can't
Tonight,
be a
more than
permanent
15,000 National Guard troops are patrolling the nation's capital.
I don't think anybody has ever seen anything like this.
D.C. is now broken up into green and red zones, and there are military and law enforcement vehicles on virtually every corner.
But today, armed protest advertised online by far-right extremists did not materialize here. There were small, non-violent gatherings at some state capitals. In Michigan, this man says the FBI contacted him days ago to make sure he was planning a peaceful rally.
A bunch of people decided not to come today because of the fear of the National Guard, and our state boys over there watching us right now.
At least 13 states have deployed their National Guards to protect state capitals. Arkansas is using civilian law enforcement.
You want to be over-prepared versus under-prepared.
So far, authorities have arrested 116 people involved in the U.S. Capitol siege. Now among them, the mother of this man, previously taken into custody, seen carrying plastic zip ties. Police say Lisa Eisenhart of Tennessee was also in the Capitol with her son. One current and one former FBI official tell NBC News that the Bureau is also investigating whether foreign governments or groups provided financial support to extremists who helped plan and execute the attack. The sources say the FBI is examining payments of $500,000 in Bitcoin. This week in Washington, the few groups that have filed for protest permits will be screened for weapons and cordoned off in 2 locations.
Do you think all of this massive show of force, do you think it will act as a deterrent?
You certainly hope so. There is certainly security like we've never seen before.
And Gabe joins us now from near Capitol Hill. Gabe, how do the closures there compare to other inaugurations past?
Well, Kate, the perimeter is much larger today. The Secret Service and other agencies dramatically expanded it. And tomorrow, an inauguration rehearsal is scheduled after it was postponed a day.
Security for Wednesday's inauguration is ramping up in the face of unprecedented warnings of violence. David Martin is tracking the preparations.
The nation's capital is an armed camp. Police, Secret Service, FBI, everywhere. Backed by a staggering number of National Guard troops under the command of Major General William Walker.
To have 25,000 guardsmen here to support the federal law enforcement should tell everybody that we're prepared for pretty much anything.
25,000 troops, many of them armed. That compares with 340 unarmed guardsmen on duty when the Capitol was stormed and 9,500 at Barack Obama's first inauguration. But here's the most telling comparison. 25,000 is 5 times the number of troops in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Since 9/11, we've been focused on the threat of Islamist terror, which is still a threat, but we need to recognize that in this country, the challenge we have is one of homegrown terror.
Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO of the Anti-Defamation League, says the wave of arrests that followed the storming of the Capitol will not stop the protests.
For them, the arrests are like a kind of martyrdom. They see it as a necessary step, and they're able to glorify themselves even when they're detained in this way.
It's taking place on social media, the same place terrorist groups like ISIS got their start. What are you seeing on social media?
We're seeing the same thing the FBI is seeing, which is all the lights blinking
Good
red.
evening. The country is on edge tonight. State capitals are in lockdown amid threats of more violence. Windows are boarded up, fences raised, and police and National Guard are on patrol. And Washington, D.C. resembles a military occupation. In the coming days, there will be 4 times as many troops there than in Afghanistan and Iraq combined. And tonight, we're learning of the arrest of an armed man near the Capitol. Our teams are spread out across the country, and we begin with Vaughn Hilliard in Washington.
Tonight, a possible threat at the Capitol. According to Capitol Police, a man tried to enter the secure area of Wednesday's inauguration in a pickup truck with, quote, unauthorized credentials. When police searched his vehicle, they found a loaded gun and 500 rounds of ammunition. The man, identified by police, was arrested and charged. The police did not comment on his possible intentions. It comes as the core of the nation's capital enters a near total lockdown, with more than 9,500 National Guardsmen now in D.C.
It looks like a war zone.
Empty streets as the district shuts down. This after the fatal law enforcement failures on January 6th. Federal authorities have now arrested more than 100 individuals accused of being involved in the insurrection, including Peter Stager of Arkansas.
Death is the only remedy for what's in that building.
Stager, according to the FBI, shown beating an officer with an American flag. And Jenna Ryan, a Texas real estate agent, charged after storming the Capitol, telling CBS News,
I was displaying my patriotism when I was there, and I was just protesting.
Authorities are still working to identify even more of the insurrectionists, including this man. In new photos released today, the FBI believes he is involved in this video, in which Officer Daniel Hodges is pinned into a door jamb.
They ripped my mask off, stole my equipment, beat me up, sprayed me with everything.
Multiple U.S. House committees today announcing a congressional review, writing in a letter to the FBI and Director of National Intelligence, quote, this still emerging story is one of apparent and high-level failures, in particular with respect to intelligence and security preparedness.
And Vaughn, we're learning new details about that man arrested for carrying a gun near the Capitol.
That's right. The man told authorities he was working in the area as private security. Jose?
Vaughn Hilliard in Washington, thank you. Across the country, there are real fears that there may be violence at state capitals this weekend, prompting extreme security measures on the ground, but also in the air. Blaine Alexander reports.
Tonight, in nearly every corner of the country, Capitol buildings barricaded, boarded up, and bracing for the worst.
Taking this very, very seriously.
The National Guard is at the ready, deployed to at least 13 state capitals, including Massachusetts and Ohio, where the state capitol is closed through Inauguration Day.
Here in Michigan, months after armed protesters stormed the Capitol, openly carrying firearms now banned inside the Capitol.
Here in Sacramento, 1,000 members of the National Guard have joined California Highway Patrol in forming a defensive barrier around the Capitol building.
At airports, the TSA is cracking down, upping the number of federal marshals on flights and adding more random gate screenings and canine teams. This as the FBI director urges anyone planning to cause trouble to stay at home.
We've got to disrupt any attempt or attack. Our posture is aggressive. It's going to stay that way through the inauguration.
In Florida, authorities have already arrested a man for allegedly inciting violence against protesters in Tallahassee.
That makes the threat right here in our backyard, and we are prepared.
And in Georgia, a political lightning rod during the election, Governor Brian Kemp says the threat level is low, but he is taking no chances.
We are taking nothing for granted. I think you can see what happens when you do that, looking back to last week.
And Blaine joins us now from Atlanta. Blaine, how are officials there preparing?
Well, Jose, law enforcement officials are understandably hesitant to go into specific details, but here at the state capitol, you can already see the changes. In addition to these armored vehicles, we're seeing barricades like this on every side of the building, not just here at the Capitol, but at City Hall, just a few blocks away. The governor says that he is ready to deploy the National Guard.
Washington, D.C. is a city under siege today. Soldiers are camped inside the Capitol building for the first time since the Civil War. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi addressed a detachment in the shadow of the Capitol, while other members of Congress handed out pizzas. Airbnb is canceling all Washington area bookings to ensure hate group members are not part of the Airbnb community. Former New York and LA Police Chief Bill Bratton.
We are in a very critical time in our nation's history where we have to have 20,000 National Guard, 10,000 law enforcement at the inauguration to maintain security.
There are fast-breaking developments in the investigation, including the arrest of the suspect charged with tossing a fire extinguisher at cops during the riot. Robert Sanford was tracked down by his knit hat. It turns out CFD stands for Chester Fire Department in Pennsylvania. Yup, the suspect who threw the fire extinguisher is a retired firefighter. That's his name on the back of the hat. There are disturbing claims that the invasion was an inside job. A handful of Republican lawmakers allegedly gave insurrectionists a dry run inside the Capitol the day before the riot. They are now under intense investigation. I spoke to Ohio Congressman Tim Ryan.
Members of Congress knowingly gave tours to people who they knew might storm the Capitol?
We have members of Congress who gave tours the day before the event on January 6th with potentially people who were in the insurrection the next day. And we know that there was a decent knowledge of the Capitol buildings and certain rooms. If the member of Congress knew that there was going to be a move onto the Capitol and they were taking people around the Capitol to give them a preview, that would be a huge problem.
Dramatic new video is also emerging. This man can be seen kicking and punching in windows until he is overpowered by cops. This officer fled through a security gate, but the insurrectionists stopped it from coming down.
Oh, you scared now?
The mob marched down corridors, kicking at doors and threatening Nancy Pelosi.
We're coming for you, Nancy!
Many of the rioters were seen wearing these military-style electronic earmuffs. I got these at a sporting goods store for $50. They're designed to block out the sound of gunfire and explosions, but allow whoever's wearing them to hear radio transmissions.
Despite fears of new violence, the inauguration will take place next Wednesday, and it has just been announced that Lady Gaga will sing the national anthem.
Today, look at these pictures, so impressive. Many of the people who work on Capitol Hill say they haven't seen anything like it since 9/11. These are members of the U.S. National Guard receiving their weapons before taking up their positions around Washington. Security concerns and fears of new violence are growing after last week's attack on Congress and yesterday's second impeachment of Donald Trump. About 20,000 of these National Guard troops will be in the Capitol ahead of next Wednesday's inauguration of Joe Biden. That is reportedly more military right now than the U.S. has in Afghanistan and Iraq combined. Think about that. So many National Guard are in Washington, there's no place for them to sleep. Hundreds of them on the floor of the Capitol building. This video captured in the hallways, images that recall accounts from the U.S. Civil War, when Union forces at one point bivouacked into the House and Senate chambers. So some historic references, because these are unprecedented times, and this is the level of security now and through the foreseeable future there in Washington, but not just in Washington.